See, that you're not useless. You're there. Also,
I have my moments.
good evening, guys. I'm gonna start rather quickly on the builds and gear, and then I'm gonna go through the more interesting stuff. So as for the gear, we have two different ways of playing. We're starting with Spellbreaker first, and then we're gonna go to Berserker. For the Spellbreaker, you can either run it as support class or as a power class. Now, as a support, you could run it with full minstrel gear if you really want, but there's almost no need for it. So I highly suggest to go with Celestial with durability runes. Weapons are sword, warhorn, the armor. For power, change my build template because I'm in combat. As for power, we have Marauder, mostly with assassins on the accessories, so you get a nice get really close to as high as possible. As weapon sets, you want the great sword and the armor still, because it's a Spellbreaker build. Always have a armor. The great sword is yeah. If you have Spellbreaker as the great sword, then armor. You could also play other weapons, of course. You could run with the axe in offhand and sword the main hand. That gives you the mobility and the burst damage on the axe number 5. You could run double axe, which I don't have, so I cannot show, but you do. I usually run with the great sword because it's to play with and it's easy to up damage on. Now, back to the support. Now the we also have, of course, the support build and the power build. The main difference between the support and power Spellbreaker is your playstyle. Now, the role that you're gonna cover is mostly the same. You're always gonna focus on dropping CCs on the enemy and boon corrupting the enemy. Now, you're gonna achieve that differently, and you're also gonna do something else if you're support. Because if you're support, you'll also try to provide a little bit of help to your party. You can do that through the warhorn. You can apply barrier. You can cleanse immobs, which can be extremely helpful because you are in melee. You are in the middle of everything, and you can always charge to help people that are getting stuck behind. You can also apply the banner of tactics, which also cleanse, well, not cleanse, but removes the immob resistance, and also provides stability and super speed. Those are all support skills that you can use to support your party. On the other hand, on the power Spellbreaker, the banner of tactics is, well, it's there, but it could also be changed with something else, not as important as in the support. You are more focused on the damage component, and even trade wise, you are losing some of your CC's capabilities, and the trade off is more damage. Now, is it worth it? Maybe. It depends. It depends from the size of the squad that you are in, and it depends on the size of the enemy that you are fighting. The smaller scale, Power Spellbreaker is better because, well, in smaller scale you have less people, so the individual DPS of each classes are more important. In bigger scale, the support Spellbreaker tends to have more value because the value is more on the CC's capabilities and disruption of the enemy squad rather than the individual damage. With 20, 25 or 25 plus, the support Spellbreaker or Celestial variant is the default choice. In a smaller scale, you can pick whatever you want, but I would suggest going for power. Now I won't go in all the details about the trades. The most important ones are the all the things that increase or add emob effects. Statics helps with that. We also the double standards for the banner. Yeah, sure. It could be an option to switch this in. That's skills. That could help granting a little bit more fuel uptime to this sub party, but then you would lose part of the utility, and that's why usually default build as the leg specialist. But yeah, the main thing about Spellbreaker, which doesn't change between power or support, is the interaction between the enchantment collapse and the loss aversion, which has been nerfed heavily. And dispelling force. Now, essentially, what you want to do is to keep being as annoying as possible for the use of your hammer skills. Number 5 is a knockdown, so it also removes a boon. The staggering blow is a knockback, which and boon. Your Earth Shaker is a stun, which is a boon. Well, that might be it, but also we have the launch. Launch is also something that removes a boon. Break enchantment, remove a boon. While your elite skill also remove boons. And whenever you remove boons, you get more adrenaline. With more adrenaline, you do more stuff. And removing a boon cause other targets to lose boons, so you can quickly see how that scales rather well. So your main objective is stripping boons, so that's Spellbreaker is used. Now, utility skills wise, we have Stomp. Stomp is quite unusual. Usually, better builds, we might see balance stance. Well, the usage is roughly the same. Stomp grants you stability and also grants more stability on hit, which is nice. It also removes emob, so it can be used to run away. It's kind of a waste, but it can be used for that. It's also a launch, so that means that when you land on somebody, you're gonna strip stability because, well, if there's stability, the launch is gonna absorb the stability. If not, you're gonna still strip something up because of the trait that we saw before. And if you do that, then you're gonna bunker up even more. Which is why it's nice. It's nice, especially because it allows you to open using stomp. You can stomp into the enemy blob, then grant yourself stability long enough to nail the Windows disenchantment. The basic rotation for the Spellbreaker was rather simple because you're gonna smash all the buttons that you have at your disposal. But how you start it, it's to know. Your first skill is most likely gonna be Armor Shock, which is your only ranged skill on this class. It's a 600 range, so the 600 is exactly the distance of Stomp where your icon is. It's not that far, it's 2 dodges worth, but it's quite of a range. So as you get close to the enemy, you want to Armor Shock as you keep moving forward. Your Armor Shock, and when you are close enough, you can start doing something else. Now, you can Armor Shock, stomp in, and drop your bubble. Then, by that time, you will most certainly have the Earthshaker. So if somebody is trying to move away, you can use Earthshaker as a gap closer to get close to them. Remove your immob and stun them. As with every warrior, well, Spellbreaker and Berserker for sure, you want to use as many burst skill as possible. Your Earthshaker is a skill that you definitely want to use as much as possible. Your full counter, it's helpful because it's a daze. You can activate it. It works if you are in the middle of something, if something does attack you, otherwise that's completely wasted. But the full counter, you can use it to reset the Earthshaker, which is nice, especially if you just use your Windows Disenchantment. You have loads of boons and adrenaline. So if you're opening with the armor first, but that's how you're gonna do that. You activate your Armor Shock, you get close with Stomp, and you start, well, either dropping the bubble if you are in rotation for the bubble, or you use your quick enchantments and Earthshakers as much as possible. Now, you can also open in sword. Now, if you do that, well, you have there's a leap which helps you to also get closer. Jump in. It takes the target that you have, and if you don't have the target, it leaps forward in the direction that you are going. So, pay attention where you're gonna use it. It's quite a leap forward because it also leaps for so you can leap in, use your quick enchantments, and then continue from there. Keep in mind that you do, if I remember correctly, you have shorter cooldown on. Okay, yeah. We are running fast weapons because your weapon swap is a cooldown at you, and also you're gonna get adrenaline by swapping weapons. If you do choose to start with sword, an option, then you're gonna switch almost immediately to the hammer to start Berserker. Now, what's the advantage and disadvantage of it? The advantage is that you might have more adrenaline if you are struggling with removing boons. The downside is that you don't have an easy way out. I always suggest to start with the hammer, and then as you want to move away, you switch to your defensive weapon set, which is the sword and warhorn, and you charge away with the Pull of Valor. So you have barrier and you have swiftness, quickness, and you can quickly move away. But definitely, those are two interchangeable ways of approaching the enemies. There were some messages in guild chat which was about the whether to drop the bubble on command or free to drop whenever you feel needed. Now, of course, in a guild environment, you want to ask your commander what to do. Some commanders prefer to let the warrior decide when to bubble, and the other commanders prefer to specify a rotation, and or some guilds have the bubble defined on some calls, like we want the bubble on the wells and breaches. So whenever you hear wells on something, we also expect the bubble to go there. It's it depends. Now in open squad, rarely the commander asks for the dome or bubble. In that case, well, of course, use it however you feel like. But always, regardless of the situation, talk to the other warriors and establish rotation. The thing that you do not want is to waste a 90-second cooldown all in the same spot because all the warriors saw the opportunity to drop the bubble. That's something that you definitely do not want. And also, even in cases where, maybe we want the bubble on wells and breach, but if we are calling wells and breach at the same spot and the bubble is already up, well, we don't need two bubbles. We can save one and use it for another engage on another position shortly after. So that's kind of covered the dome thing. By the way, the window disenchantment has quite a long cast time. It's 1.5 seconds. It can be reduced using quickness, but still it's quite a long cast time. Now, that means where you want to drop it and when you start casting, it's not the same spot. And you need to take in consideration the fact that you are casting something. And that also means that while you are about to activate your Windows disenchantment, you cannot dodge. Because if you do dodge, you're gonna cancel the cast and everybody's gonna be sad because there will be no keep all these things in mind, which is why I suggest, especially when you are getting started with it, to charge in with the stomp roughly where the cluster is, so you're gonna get a little bit of stab, and assuming that you should also have the pre-stab up, but let's assume that your vibrant is sleeping, so you need to do that without relying on the vibrant. Going in with the stomp is your best bet to actually land the window disenchantment. If you really want to nail it every single time, you need to drop the banner of tactics as you're going in, and stomp and charge the thing. With this combo, you used basically all your cooldowns, but you are always gonna nail the bubble. Now, in previous patches, the same thing will be obtained by using the balance stance and the Berserker stance combination, which is roughly the same thing. You're gonna get stab, you're gonna get resistance. The advantage from this is that you also get quickness. Last time, it's doable. Something else which is rather important. As a warrior, if you do exactly what I just shown, from the enemy perspective, you will see somebody that start charging you super fast and try to get to you. Chances are that if you're fighting someone with half of a brain cell, they're gonna punish that kind of movement. That's the difference. You want to coordinate with your commander and be sure that you're not gonna run alone and your squad are gonna stand still until they see a bubble going up, but that distance between you and your party and your squad by that extension, it's not 1200 range, because if that's the case, then you're most likely gonna be dead. The bubble will go up, but then you're dead. And if you're about to say that, but I can save myself by using the remaining cooldowns that I have, I'm gonna say, yeah, that's true. You can do that once, but what's the added value of that? Yeah. So far, I mean, you could, of course, if you see that you are failing, or the commander is not following you, then you could always run away with Call of Valor, a couple of dodges and a charge. It's quite doable. Yeah. Why? I haven't really talked about To the Limit, which is your healing skill. Your healing skill has a nice bonus effect, which is that it also fills your adrenaline. And grants endurance to allies, which is not enough for a dodge, but it's it's like almost half of the. Now it's nice because that would allow you to activate it and immediately use your boss skill. Now, are you gonna use it for that? No, not really. Do you want to use it as healing skill? Yeah, not even for that. At the start, you rarely have the need for the extra adrenaline, because if you are opening with the hammer shock followed by the storm, you're gonna get full adrenaline anyway. So you don't need the limit. But so there are quite often cases where your adrenaline start, or you need a little bit more adrenaline, and to get that you will need to start using 1-1-1 and slow skill, and you start losing the flow of combat. In that case, you can pop To the Limit. To the Limit is also useful for running away. If we are dodging away from the enemy, using To the Limit can help slower member of your party to get maybe an extra dodge. If they dodge too much, that could be. That's about it. Whatever you do not use Stomp or Earthshaker as tools to run away, because those are your most effective skills as a Spellbreaker, and if you are using them to reposition, the support that you're bringing to the squad is zero, and not gonna help anybody with that. Now, are there any questions about the Berserker, the Spellbreaker? So I can move on to the Berserker.
I will say that for me, sometimes using the hammer F1 to get back on squad after doing bubble or something, that's definitely something I'm doing.
Yes, I that's also a reason why I said that, because we noticed that it happens. Of course, whenever I say never do that, there are reason why you might want to do that, and of course, why you all if you're doing something that it's technically wrong, you always have to think why are you doing that, and in that case, if you're forced to move back using your Earthshaker, it means that you have misread the situation and you dropped the bubble, but your squad didn't follow up. So at the end of the cast time of the bubble, the distance between you and your commander is more than a dodge, because otherwise you would simply dodge. So in that case, yes, I mean, you can definitely use the Earthshaker, but then you have to ask yourself, was I too quick to jump in? Did I understand correctly what my commander wanted? Or yeah, maybe I can play more defensively, wait a few more seconds, and then move. Because that's one way of
I agree.
avoiding using your most important skills. Because something that I haven't mentioned, but both Spellbreaker and the Berserker greatly love alacrity. So most of your cooldowns are getting reduced by alacrity, and if you have alacrity in your squad, then it's less important if you waste an Earthshaker, because it's gonna be back in like 3 seconds, and most likely you will, you wouldn't even notice. Stomp, usually it's like 20-second of cooldown. It's I mean, you could do that in extreme danger, but it's dramatic. But then, always think about why.
Yeah, I agree. Did you also mention like using the hammer F1 not into the enemy blob but to the sides?
Well, I haven't said that in particular, but that also applies to every single CC in the game. Whenever you want to place, or any placement of the skills, you always want to place it to the edge of the blob rather to the center mass of the. That's because the slower members of the group are at the edge, because if you're all together, that's as you're moving, you generate a tail, so you always want to try and CC the tail, because they are the one with the slowest reaction time. Now, that is true for the Earthshaker. That's not true for the Wind of Disenchantment, because the Wind of Disenchantment, you're assuming that the blob is moving in from my left to right. You kind of want to place it in their path, or as close as possible to the center of the group, so that when you Earthshake, you're gonna Earthshake on the left, and you nail the tail. It takes a little bit of practice, because you have to read the movement of the enemy squad, the desired location of the fight, which is usually where the commander placed the marker. The commander says, bubble on the purple marker, but you see that the squad is moving on the right, so you're gonna place it slightly on the right side, and then Earthshake on the marker, so that you're gonna Bone Rip more people, and the guys that they have to get back to the squad, they have to walk through all the bubble. Because if I place the bubble here and Earthshake on the door, on the marker, to actually get back to the squad, they have to go through all the bubble to do so. Or even worse, they can decide, since the bubble is roughly at the edge, well, I can go around it, causing them to get even further from their squad. So, it's positioning the bubble requires a little bit of finesse. It's usually never what the commander says, but more to the direction of the squad. Same goes for the hammer shock. If the bubble marker is the point where the commander wants to drop all the damage, all our damage, you want to hammer shock in that direction as you get close, but you close on an angle, so that it's a cone effect. Gonna try to pick as many people as possible, but trying always to split the squad. As with any CC class, you are more effective if you manage to split, isolate, and disrupt the flow of movement of the enemy squad, that's why you always want to look at what the enemy is doing rather than what the squad is doing. That is clear. Also goes for the stomp. Same thing. The stomp, you want to stomp on the side of the place of the engagement, considering the direction of movement, so that if you stomp someone, you're gonna stomp them on the other side of the fight rather than towards the group. Remember that the objective is always to split squad. That's the Spellbreaker. I mean, the Spellbreaker requires more practice than Economancer to get it right, because you are always into the enemy, so you always have to be really pay attention to the red circle on the floor, how to dodge, and smash your buttons. Luckily, you also have a shit ton of HP, so that shouldn't be a problem. Sweet. 28k of HP, you can sustain a lot. And that's also the reason why I highly suggest to run the Celestial build rather than the Power, especially if you're learning. Any other questions, remarks, things that you want to say? I suppose
I would mention, like, the Sword Flurry is a bit situational. It can be good if you can, like, catch people and get them stuck in one of our Spellbreaker bubbles. But in general, for me, it's like I'm mostly just using the F1 of the hammer, and sometimes F2 in Sword to survive, to push through some people, stuff like that.
Generally, you don't want to waste your adrenaline on the flurry first skill on Sword. To be fair, Sword is like one of the worst weapon for power-based warriors, because it tends to be more of a condi weapon. It is used in Wallace's Ward only because of the Savage Leap, and that's it. That's the only reason why that skill is used. Now, sure, you have a Nemob here, but it's 2 seconds, maybe a little bit longer if you're running infusions. You might get to 3 seconds, but it's not worth it. Yeah, well, that's the gist of it.
Yeah, it's just X and Mace are also not really good on support Celestial. So yeah,
The,
there's nothing there.
the maze looks nice because you have barrier, you have daze, you have stuns, but that's all single target. The Ox, it could be decent. You have a cripple. You have bit of damage on the eviscerate, but then again, it's
Yeah, I used to sometimes run dagger, but again, that's also like not
the
great.
the dagger is it's nice if you're roaming. If you're roaming, I usually use dagger while roaming, but then again, it's always a single target weapon. So you know we usually run with the sword because of the mobility, and it gets useful especially to run away. You can easily savage leap away. And by the way, that's also a better way of if you have to reposition yourself, instead of using your earthshaker, you can always switch to sword. Well, remove your target and then leap away. Important, remove your target because well, if you don't do that, you're gonna leap back to the enemy. Well, also gonna probably die. Oh, I haven't said that, but the sigils that you want are in the build. But in the build, you can find both builds on Meta Battle. They are basically that. I mean, it's the absorption and nullification is quite the default on both weapons, as long as you have sigils that remove condis, boons. That's what you are there for. Now the power Berserker and the power Spellbreaker, because both of them are power, use the same exact gear. The difference is in the weapon. So if there are not other questions on the Spellbreaker, I will switch to the Berserker. Show you how you should do damage. That's about it, because Berserker is quite one-dimensional. Oh, so Berserker. Berserker is an amazing build. Really engaging. The build is quite simply just take all the damage modifier that exist in the game and put them together, which is exactly what we did. The weapons, you want the Great Sword as the secondary weapon. You could run longbow if you go ranged. You could run in axe, both main hand and offhand, and now I don't have the second axe. That's about it. That's the variation of weapons. Exist. Remember? Yeah, I will keep a random weapon. The great sword is the weapon that does damage for you. The others are situational. The longbow helps you to bridge the gap as DPS class with the range play, because the longbow is a nice range weapon. Now, utility wise, the important utility skills that you have is your healing skill, your Signet of Fury, and that's it. Now, the balance stance, Berserker stance, those can be swapped with the same combo that you were playing on the Berserker, so the banner plus the stomp. It's an option. Yeah, always do that. The important skills are the signet and the healing skill. Your elite skill is gonna be your battle standard. Unless you're fighting in small scale, small, in 5 and 10, then Rampage can be interesting. But the battle standard, otherwise it's slightly different. So, then again, as with any warrior-based specialization, what you want to do is maximize the number of burst skills that you're going to use, and it's quite easy. You get in combat, you activate your signet, you activate your berserk, your arc slice, you use your healing skill, your arc slice again, you start 1-1-1 the downs, and you arc slice again. You keep 1-1-1. Well, you guys get the gist, right? And arc slice again.
One thing, the weapon swap also, of course, gives you additional adrenaline. So sometimes I do like, start in longbow.
Yeah, but the important thing, it's quite important. The simple rotation that I've shown, the signet, berserker, arcing slice, healing scheme, you keep doing that shit. That thing is the burst damage. Like, you activate that, and you down people immediately as you do that. The longbow, if you're using your berserker on the longbow, you're increasing your damage done, but you're not increasing your burst damage, which is usually defined as padding. Now, what you do is applying an area of effect of pressure damage, which is like constant ticking damage, which could down people, but it's not. It doesn't immediately kill somebody. So
yeah, the reason I mention it is because if you're running XX instead of the longbow, then it might be nice to do the weapon swap to get one more like.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, that could always be the option. But even if the only thing that you do as a berserker is literally activating your signet, activating berserk, arcing slice, healing skill, arcing slice, hitting 1-1-1 and arcing slice again, you're most likely gonna be on the top of the damage and doing like more than 90% of the berserker that goes out in the world. It's that simple. Now, of course, you're a melee character. As a melee character, you always need to pay attention on where you put your feet, because most likely it's gonna be in a lot of shit. Unlike your Spellbreaker variant, you don't have that much HP to actually survive, because we're running Marauder, so there's no toughness and only a little bit of vitality that keeps you alive. That means that you have to always evaluate your positioning while you're in melee range. You also your two utility skills. You have to use them instead of thinking about your party. You think about yourself and when you actually need them. If you can trust your Firebrand, you can trust them to use the stability on push, so you wouldn't need to use Stomp or Balance Stance to actually perform your damage. On the other hand, you are in need of the extra stability, then you always have to plan it out. You could, for example, stomp in, activate your signet, berserk, switch, 1, and you do damage. That's 6 damage. Jumping in, activating a couple of skills. The benefit of that in comparison to other classes like Dragon Hunters and other DPS classes is that your damage happens exactly where you want, and there is no layering of damage. Everything happens in a second. The downside of that is that everything happens within a second, so that if you start too early with your damage rotation, then the enemies will still have all the usual things like Aegis. They're not gonna be CC'd, they're most likely gonna have protection and all that kind of stuff. So the lack of layering in that case, meaning having multiple skills that deal damage and all combined do a big amount of damage, is kind of issue. Which is why, as a Berserker, you don't want to be the same as a Spellbreaker, running in like a crazy man and try to get in early, but rather you'd want to let your Scourges do a little bit of job on the enemy, let your Bone Whip do the effect, attack people on while they are CC'd by your Spellbreakers or by your Chronomancers, and then use your boss damage. Because you are one trick pony. You activate your skills, you do damage. Outside of that window, outside of the Berserker doesn't really do that much, that damage. So, there's no value in getting in too early, and if you get that too late, then all your damage is going to be wasted. Obscene amount of damage, but if they are already dead, well, then you're doing that for nothing. So, you need to strike a balance between knowing when to actually push in as a Berserker. And the rule of thumb is move with your commander and be slightly ahead of him, and that should be enough. Which is kind of the opposite, as a Spellbreaker, because as a Spellbreaker, you want to be one of the first one to get in, so that you can actually CC and help other people do their job. That's the main difference between Berserker and a Spellbreaker. Also, you have the battle standards that can kill people or revive. That's the added benefit of having a.
If I may make one other comment.
Yeah, sure.
In Berserker mode on Greatsword, you basically have a radius around you, which is already quite a bit bigger than your auto damage. Because right now I cannot hit them. And the thing sort of gets bigger at the end of the cast. Which you can sort of see, first I'm hitting just the golem. And then in the end I'm hitting the two behind it as well.
Yep.
So you can sort of use that the same with using F1 hammer to do flanking damage.
Yeah. Remember that it's helpful because if somebody is moving away, they're still gonna get damage. And as a Berserker, you kind of want to be in the middle of of as many people as possible so that your AoE effect is impactful. But also, knowing that it has a range means that if it's about to end and we are pulling away, but there is no need for you to stay in the middle of them. You can simply follow the commander. You're gonna still do damage and just keep moving. Now, I haven't really talked about all the other skills that this sword has, mostly because what you want to use is most likely your number one. If you're finishing downs and you already won the fight, then you can use 100 blades. The whirlwind attack is nice to remove immob. Rush also removes immob. Blade trail is a projectile, so it can be reflected. That in mind. So if you are leading with that, you might end up being crippled. It's not ideal as a melee class. Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
No, loud and clear.
Cool. In that case, thank you guys for joining. I will keep you updated on the next training session, which I can't remember what it was all about, but I'm sure it would be something interesting. Well, see you guys.